Okay, I want to go over PaintEffects just real briefly, a little tutorial about what I spoke to you about earlier on Wednesday. So I have here just a scene, and you can see it's got like a ground that's kind of hilly in my object. And a couple of things that I found. One is most of the PaintEffects tools are found here under modeling, this word generate over here. So if I click on this generate, you'll notice that I have the PaintEffects tool right here. And if I go down to get brush, this takes me to that content browser directly to the PaintEffects area. So again, this is here under generate, get brush. So let's say I want to paint some trees on this ground here. My ground isn't flat, so I want to be able to paint up over the hill. I want my say trees to follow up and over my little hill here. So the first thing I'll do before I get a brush is I'll select the ground, and I'll go to generate, and I will make paintable. This will allow me to create my paint stroke directly on this uneven surface. So now that I've made this paintable, I'm going to get my brush, and let's see, I'll go down to trees, and let's see here, I'll get this tree simple. So now I can brush right on this. Let's see, let's go right over it, and you can see that it goes right over the hump because I made that paintable. And there's my tree. So I have a couple of options here under the stroke in the attribute editor. So I have these, this first one where it says tree stroke sample is just my transform, so it shows where this was placed. The tree shape is the actual node of the whole stroke, all this line. And then the tree sample is each tree being sampled individually. So let me do the whole stroke shape here just to let you know. Again, the sample density here determines how many trees I have. Greater than 1, I have more trees. Less than 1, I have less trees. The surface offset allows me to make some of these trees closer or farther from the surface. So if I pull them down, you'll notice that some of these trees that are a little bit above the ground now become just slightly inset into the ground. If I go the other way, positive, they'll kind of be advanced a little bit off the ground. So if you draw them and they're penetrating through the ground, you may want to give a positive number. If they're not at 0 right in the ground, they're a little bit above it, you can use the surface offset and push the end back into the surface. The other thing you might be interested in here is the normal direction. Here, if I click on normal direction and use normals, here if I don't click on it, the trees follow the normal direction of the ground. But if I want them to stay all straight up, right? So this tree doesn't grow out the side, but it grows straight up. Then I would go to the normal direction over here, and I click on use normal. And I want to change this to the Y direction. So this would be a Y of 1 and maybe a Z of 0. Remember, this is X, Y, Z, so Y goes straight up. So there, so you can see that now the trees go straight up. If you want to give them a little addition, like have them be a little bit on the Z, you can like do like a little bit of both, 0.5. And now they're kind of more or less straight up, but they go also towards the Z direction. The other thing I want to show you here, I think, is under Tree Sample, and it's under Brush Profile, I believe. And that is clipping. Let's see if I can find it. It might be under here. Oh, it's under end bounds. It's under the stroke, of course, because it's the whole stroke. So right now, I have a curve, and you can see the curve right here. And it has a beginning and an end, a 0 and a 1. But let's say I want my trees to only grow on this side and not on this side, right down here. So I don't want all of these trees. I can go to maximum clip, that's the end, and I can begin to lose some of these other trees. And now you see I have just the trees that grow on that side. So I can use this maximum clip to draw essentially less of my trees within here. I can still go to my density and increase the density on that side. So now I have more trees on that side. If I go to my tree sample, this is how big each individual tree is. So I can increase the global scale or make it larger or smaller. That's the main thing. This global scale increases the size of what you have of your paint effect. So here I have a light, and I'm going to just rotate the light to this side. So now I want to make shadows on the ground here, let's say. So as I render out, you'll see that my ball here has a shadow, but my trees do not. So I want to show you how to get shadows here as kind of the last item on the list. And you don't have to convert these. You don't have to do anything fancy. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off ray trace shadows, and I'm going to turn on another kind of shadow. So I'll show you. If you go to the render settings and you go to the Maya software tab and you go to ray trace, you're going to turn it off. Okay? So that's the first thing. You're turning off ray trace globally so that now if I render, nothing has a shadow. I'm going to select the light, and I'm going to go to the shadows section of that light, and I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to turn off ray trace, and I'm going to turn on this. It's called depth map shadow attributes. Depth map shadows, essentially it's going to create a shadow map, like an image of how the shadows would fall on the ground, and then apply that image to the ground as a shadow. So it kind of makes a false shadow. It kind of takes your objects and calculates where the shadows would fall, and then gives you essentially an image, although you don't really get to edit the image directly, of the shadows on the ground. So that's what depth map shadows is here. The resolution of 512 is really small. I increase it to at least 1024. You'll get a better quality of the shadow the higher the resolution is. And now I'll render. And now you see both the shadow on the ground for the sphere and for the trees. So that was this depth map shadows. And the shadow color still works. If I bring my shadow color down a little bit, I will get a grayer shadow, not so dark, maybe even down a little bit more. Right, you can see the shadow is getting much less. Right, I can make it just a little, fairly not dark shadow. You don't want something that's so dark like that. So you can see that I can get a different shadow, just like I would with the ray trace. What's gonna maybe not be so great is sometimes if you're very close and you do, you see it's kind of fuzzy. And you can increase the resolution if you have any problems with that. Just be careful. The resolution here gets large. It can slow down your render, and it's not great as far as if you were animating, because it has to change the depth map continually. But other than that, for our still imagery, this is fine. And this is how you might make shadows if you have the PaintEffects on your scene. You can just use this depth map shadows. Remember, in the attributes for render settings, you have to turn off the ray trace. So that's a little tour of basics to PaintEffects, how to paint on an uneven surface, how to clip some of the curve if you don't want to draw on the whole curve, how to set the global scale, how to set the number of trees that you have using the sample density. I should say that the seed just makes different versions of the trees. That's all it does here. So you can see that I could have some shadows without having to convert these by using the depth map shadows. So that's about what I wanted to show you for PaintEffects. Just very basic stuff, but that's really all you'll need.